Greetings to everyone. This is Pastor Brian Cash, and I'm so grateful that you all have decided to join the Living Room Bible Study. I'm excited today because on this day, September 30th, is actually the last day to fill out your census, and I pray that you all have done so. I pray that you all have gone through that process because it is those funds that we want to continue to come to our community. The funds for our schools, the funds for our children, the funds that help us, and we want to be counted. So hopefully you all have done that. And today we're talking about My Vote Matters. And before we begin, I want to offer a word of prayer that will guide our conversation. And then I'm going to turn it over to one of God's greatest gifts to the world, Mrs. Mary Warr. And she's going to lead this conversation around voting. She has picked this baton up. And I'm so grateful for Mrs. Warr and Kiana, who has been assisting her and aiding her. I'm loving this intergenerational connection. So God be praised. So let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then Mrs. Warr will take over and introduce our amazing guest today. Let's pray. God, our Father, we thank you so much for all the gifts that you give to us. We thank you that you continue to allow us and use us for your glory. God, we come tonight to talk about such an important topic, voting. And God, we know that it is through this tool that we can make change in our community and our world. And so we pray, oh God, for this conversation. We pray, oh God, that you would guide our thoughts, guide our ideas, and guide this conversation so that it continues to make an impact in this world, oh God, and those who listen may be made better as a result of them engaging in this conversation. God, we give you praise and give you glory. It's in your name that we pray. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Mary Warr, who's going to introduce all of our panelists tonight. And this is just the beginning of conversations that we will continue to have around voting until even November. So Mrs. Warr, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pastor Cash. And for those of you who are watching, thank you very much for tuning in. Our discussion today is about voting, and I can't say that enough. Voting. Before we get into our topic and before we talk to our guest panelists, I just want to take care of some housekeeping items. Just a reminder, if you have questions or comments, you can send those to the 𝐒𝐿Zion website. Periodically, there will be a prompt on the screen telling you that you can also enter your questions and your comments. Our commitment is that we will read those questions, we will get answers for those questions, and we will get back to you. If you are involved in organizations who are involved with this topic of voting, if you've come up with creative approaches to get people to the polls, please share those with us also. You know, my vote, your vote, each of our vote matter. In our discussion today, we're hoping to share information that you may not be aware of. We hope to educate you about the voting process. We want to encourage you to vote, and we want to assist you in casting your vote if that assistance is needed. Our discussion tonight is going to focus on why is voting so important? Why is this exercise so important to each of us? We want to, in our discussion tonight, dispel the rumor, the street talk that our vote doesn't matter, because truly it does. We want to talk tonight about why voting is so important to the younger generation, especially the college students who may be having difficulty registering to vote. We want to talk a little bit about why voting is so important and the difficulties faced by those in the inner cities, the difficulties, those who are taking public transportation. So we really want to flesh out these issues and come up with some hopefully solutions. We also want to change mindsets. We want people to realize that we're not talking about November 3rd or November 4th as election day. We want all of us to change our mindsets and realize that the voting process, voting starts as soon as you get your ballot. So we want to look at a voting season as opposed to a voting day. And I realize that that is going to take a shift in how we think about voting, but I'm sure we can do that. Also, it's important that we look at voting as being more than voting for the president. There are local issues that are so important. There are politicians that we need to focus on. So we need to look at voting as a major thing, just not in our presidential election. You know, as I think about this, and as I thought about our discussion tonight, group, I was reminded of my mother and her friends sitting on the porch in Alabama, talking about voting, the difficulties they were having voting, the difficulties they were having registering to vote. I remember them talking about some of the schemes, some of the Jim Crow laws that were in place, some of the things such as the voters of color had to guess the number of marbles in a jar. And I can remember her telling the story about one of the members of our community, a bright young man who figured out the number. So he went back and he told his mom, and she went to vote, and lo and behold, they had changed the size of the jar. I also remember her talking about having to guess how many bubbles can be produced by a bar of Ivory soap. Those types of schemes were in place back then. We don't have those types of issues, but we have issues nonetheless. So we're going to talk about those things tonight. We're going to talk about how we can creatively deal with the barriers that are in front of us now. They are not as obvious as they were back then, but nonetheless, they are there. You know, I can also remember the joy I felt as a child just learning about the struggles and learning about their creativity. And I'm just hoping our panel will sort of bring some of that creativity to us tonight. I'm really happy to introduce our panelists. These are people that I know, I've worked with, I consider them my friends. Our first panelist, and what I'm going to do, I will just introduce them and give you their backgrounds. And after the introduction, I will call on each of them to give their discussion on this topic, to share with us their ideas, share with us what they're doing in their particular arenas. Our first panelist is Virginia Weiss, and I think some of you may have met her, you may have known her, you may have had an opportunity to interact with her on August 30th, I believe, when we had our engagement Sunday. She was one of the women there from Bring Out the Vote, Mobilize the Vote 2020. We were so impressed with what Virginia had to say. We were so impressed with the energy that she brought to the discussion. So we asked her to come back to talk to us tonight. Virginia wears many hats. Her background is that she's a licensed independent social worker. She has a master's degree in social work administration from Case Western. But again, we have her with us because of her involvement in Mobilize the Vote 2020. I'm going to say that again, Mobilize the Vote 2020. So Virginia is one of our esteemed panelists. Our next panelist is Reverend Chelton Flanagan. I call him Reverend Chris. Chris is a family friend. I've known him more than 30 years. I've always been impressed with the activities going on in his church, which is Holy Trinity Church, and the things that he's doing in that community. Chris is creative, and I love the way he brings spirituality into everything that he's doing. So Chris is going to talk to us in terms of what his church is doing and what other churches are doing. And he's going to challenge us, I hope, to get more involved as a spiritual community, our churches, our temples, our mosques rather, to really get involved and encourage people to vote. Our last panelist is the young one, the young kid on the block, Kiana King. She is a member of East Mount Zion. She is a 4th generation member of East Mount Zion. She's a recent graduate of the University of Cincinnati. She's currently working on her master's degree. And we thought that she could share with us some of the things that are going on with the younger generation, with the college students, some of their difficulties and some of the positive things that they're doing. So we're hoping to have Kiana share with us her insights. And we're hoping that she will challenge us to do even more than we're doing with the younger people in our different churches. So with that, I have given you a background on the panel, and I'm going to ask Virginia if she would lead our discussion and talk to us about the initiative of Mobilize the Vote 2020. Miss Virginia.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for including me in this wonderful discussion. I'm a member of a local organization called, as you said, Mobilize the Vote 2020. And I just want to give a shout out for our website that people can look at and see everything we're doing and get involved if they are so moved. But it's www.mobilizethevote2020.org. It was started by a friend of mine in Cleveland Heights, and it was started because we were struggling with the outcome of the 2016 election. So really we started talking about things almost 4 years ago, and Suzie Lee Lounge is the woman I'm referring to. She's the founder of Mobilize the Vote. And a lot has happened between November 9th, 2016 and now. And so over about the last year, we've really been working very hard to build our resources, our volunteer team, and we are down to the wire now. We have a week left before, not even a week left, yes, for people to actually register to vote. So this week has been extremely hectic, and we're going to continue every day this week to register as many people as we can and get people the information they need before the deadline. There are other deadlines, but that's the initial, most important one at the moment. Our purpose, our whole idea, you know, as a social worker, I've worked with all sorts of populations, and I've really loved the work with diverse groups. But I've served underprivileged and I don't know if underprivileged is the best word, but underserved people who have not had access to voting and to other community resources. And voting, when I found out that only 30 to 50%, depending on where you are, of voting age adults actually vote, I was blown away. And that told me, and then John Lewis died, who I've admired my entire life. And all of that put together, I thought, okay, you know, I'm inspired. And I can hear John Lewis's words, and I have a few of his quotes here, which I won't subject you to unless we have time, but I just hear him in my mind speaking up how we really have to help everybody be counted in this country. Every American, every citizen should be counted. So what we are doing is really trying to get into areas that have been overlooked, honestly, and not been informed of what their options are. People who are struggling day to day and may not be as aware of what is available and how to vote and how to make their vote count and how to even know that their vote, it really does mean something. It really does count. And that if more people voted, they would see a difference in the votes and in the outcomes, but not enough people are voting. You know, when Democrats, I would just say it, when Democrats vote, they usually win. When all the Democrats get out to vote, they usually win. So I'm not here to talk about partisan politics. I'm here to talk about people getting out to vote. So I guess it might be a good time to just start about the actual logistics, right? Okay.
Yes.
October 5th is the last day to register. Okay, and that can be done online. And what we're doing is we've been going into CMHA housing, food banks, at churches, different public gatherings. And we've done it even with COVID, wearing our masks. I'm so excited. I just got these today, Be a Voter masks. Yay! But we are wearing our masks. Even some of us are wearing shields, which I would recommend too when you're talking about voting and people going out, to always be careful about that. Because a lot of people don't believe the pandemic is real, and it is, you know. But we're trying to be as COVID safe as possible. We carry wipes and gel with us everywhere we go. But we have found that people are so appreciative to hear the details, such as you can't register after October 5th. as of October 6th, people can vote in person early. We have a lot of hours available for people to vote early in person at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. And I go down there almost every day because we are taking down registrations and vote by mail applications, which look like this. These are still an option, which I'll talk about. But once October 6th comes, they have to be registered, and they can begin voting. And we have a whole month for people to vote. So that's the good news. This week, we really want to just make sure anyone who's not registered gets registered. And if you get it in by October 5th, you can vote. So there are 3 ways to vote, 3 ways to make your vote get in there into the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. And one of them is to vote from home. Many of us, including myself, have completed this form, the vote by mail application. We have it highlighted. The Board of Elections has been great. They're working overtime and we're working with them closely. But they've highlighted all the necessary areas for people to complete, including the address where they're registered at, and a mailing address if that's different, where they want their ballot to come to them, to wherever they are, so they can fill it out and then get it back starting October 6th. Their date of birth. They can give identification. Really, all you need to vote is your last 4 digits of your social security number. That's really all you need. I mean, there are caveats to that, but bottom line, that's what people should know is really, if you have the last 4 digits of your social, nobody can tell you you can't vote, okay? So you can do either one. It's much easier. Most people know the last 4 of their socials. I met one person today who did not. She was 93, and I just don't think she remembered, but she was an amazing human being, really wanting to vote. Then we check here, general election 2020. This is the general election. A lot of people are confused about, is this a primary or well, what is this? I voted already, we have a lot of people say, and we have to clarify which election this is. Signature and the date. There are lots of errors that can be made on these, and people are so busy with life that we found that. A lot of times people put today's date there and their birth date down there. That can get thrown out. We talked about the history of voter suppression in this country, and it is long and complicated, and it is still happening today in much more subtle forms, but we are definitely seeing that. And that's one of the things that Mobilize the Vote really want, and I, as a social worker, want to fight. Everybody's vote counts, and everybody's voice needs to be heard. So the other option is you're registered and you decide not to fill out the vote by mail application. Then you can go down to the Board of Elections starting on October 6th to vote in person, okay? And we hope that the lines, October 6th will probably have long lines down there, but the rest of the month, it shouldn't be as hectic as October 6th and then at polling locations on November 3rd. But people who have filled out these because they would prefer to vote in the privacy of their own home, and they can, for example, go online, or they can look at, their slate that we're passing, we're not passing out, but people that we're collaborating with are, to find out who they want to vote for. People say, I don't know who to vote for. I don't even know who they are. Well, if you do the vote by mail, you can go online, or you can talk to your husband in the other room, or wife, or partner, or grandma. Who do you think is better? And you have time to do that. The only problem with this is if you do this and you send it in, and then you go into the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, and you're locked in then as a vote by mail or an absentee ballot voter. And that's different than voting on November 3rd in person. So people are unhappy. Sometimes people get confused about that because you may hear, and this is also, I swear to God, this is voter suppression in and of itself. You might hear different pieces of information. Some people say, well, I heard I could take this down there and just say, well, I don't want to vote by mail. Well, actually, this you send in, they send you the ballot, and you would take your ballot down and say, I want to vote in person. And they most likely will say, no, you have to vote by mail with an absentee ballot. If that happens, people can go directly to that ballot box at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections and just throw it right in there. Absentee ballots are counted first, so they're fine. People want to vote in person. I have my entire life. I love voting in person. I was so pumped standing in line to vote for Barack Obama. I mean, it was like one of the best days of my life, and it was a long, long line. This is a different year. This is a different election. We can vote in person in future elections. And again, you still have that option the whole month of October. What's most important is getting people to vote early. Early. I can't say it enough. Vote starting October 6th, whether it's putting this in the ballot box, putting in their mail, which you can do. The closer we get to November 3rd, the chances are they could get there too late to the Board of Elections. That's why we prefer people take them down, and family members can take ballots down. Unfortunately, you can't take a whole group of people's ballots down. That's illegal. You don't want to get in trouble for that. And all eyes are on Ohio, and they're going to look for irregularities, and we don't really know exactly what's going to happen on Election Day. That's the other reason we would highly encourage people to vote early. Election Day, there's so many questions between COVID, the occupant of the White House, all the things that are happening right now. It could be chaotic on Election Day. So we want to avoid that. If people insist they want to vote on Election Day at their polling site, they can't go to the Board of Elections to vote on Election Day. They have to go to their polling site. So people need to know that, but that is still an option, not the preferred option, because we're also trying to get everything locked into the system. Things aren't tabulated until 7:30 on November 3rd, but votes can be in and ready to be tabulated. So I think that's the bottom line.
Virginia, thank you. We'll get back to you for additional comments because I have a couple of questions and there may be others from the other panelists, but thank you so much.
Sure.
Reverend Chris, let's talk. So let's hear about what's going on at your church and in the spiritual community. What are the churches doing? What are they strategizing? What are some of their plans?
Well, first of all, good evening, Mary. It's good to be on the panel. Thank you for asking me, and to everyone else that's on the panel. To answer your questions, the churches are very busy trying to not only individually deal with the congregation, but collectively through various clergy body, denominational bodies, get out the information, the importance of voting. Given an example, in my church, we put together a coordinator. We have a voting information coordinator. And it's not just for during this time of election, it's all year round. And I would recommend that churches do that, because it's that information that allow the churches to become abreast of what's going on, the changes, information that's needed. Because I believe so often we get to this point and we become bottlenecked because everything's brand new to us. Well, it's not so much that the issues or the changes are brand new, but they're new to us because we're just now getting the information, because we vote in the primary and the general, and after that it's done. But we need to continue ongoing being educated to what's going on. And so we're doing that. And I recommend that every church should have a voters information coordinator or a team that will keep the church and the pastor abreast of all the things that are going on. Given an example also with this election, what we're doing, as Ms. Weiss said, you cannot take, we have this souls to the poll, and we were hoping that we would be able to kind of change that and do ballots to the box, so to speak. But in Ohio, as we know, that we cannot do it that way. We cannot just bring the ballots to the church, then take them to the Board of Election. That would be wonderful, but we can't do that. And it's very important that we come up with another idea. And so what we are coming up with is that the church van, for instance, we're setting a schedule together. We're setting a schedule up where people can come to the church and get a ride to either drop off their ballot or to vote in person. We will put the schedule together, the timing together, slots and things of that nature, that they can do those kind of things. So we have to work around and within the guidelines that we need to do. But importantly, we must let people know that they must vote. It's imperative that they vote. I believe that in the church, from a spiritual point of view, I remember the words of Dr. E.V. Hill, the late Dr. E.V. Hill. And I say this all the time when it comes to such things as this. We've got to work as if there is no God. And when we get through working, realize there was nobody but God.
All right.
So that means we've got to do everything that we can. And again, to fire up people, there is the sin of imposition. What is that, Pastor Flanagan? That is imposing on God to do what he's given us the ability to do. We have the ability to vote. So we've got to do that. We can't sit back, hold our hands, and think that everything's going to be okay. Jesus gave us an example. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying, but when he got through praying, he continued his job up to Calvary. So what does that mean? There's work yet still to be done. So if that can help you understand and motivate people that we have to vote and we cannot sit back, but we have to challenge our congregation of all ages, because voting it does not only affect the presidency. I know we're all looking at that. But we can see how the Congress is doing. We can see the changes. Even right now, the Supreme Court, what's going on there, it's the domino effect, and nothing happens anywhere that does not affect everywhere. And our world is affected by this. So it's just important that we do that. And my church, we're doing that. We're taking people to the polls. We're making sure they get to the polls. We're making them accountable. We're challenging them every Sunday. We're conversations, even to the point, to give you an example, one of the denominational groups, United Pastors, what we're doing, they're asking that like the husbands take their wives, take their mothers, to the poll to drop off their ballots and then take them to lunch, take them to dinner. Whatever we can do, this is a time of creativity everywhere.
Yes,
we know that because we're here being creative. So it's a time for creativity. So however we need to do it, we have to do it. Even young people, the things that they do, how they're doing things, but we have to vote because it matters.
Yes.
So if that answers what the church is doing, what the church is challenged to do, but more importantly, I challenge the church to get you a voters information coordinator and keep them there so that they can keep their hand on the pulse of what's going on, and they can in turn disseminate that information to the congregation as a whole so that we will be abreast constantly of what is going on.
Thank you, Chris. I really love that idea. And knowing you, it will be an intergenerational group of people.
Yes.
Because this is an excellent training ground for the young people.
It is.
Yes,
definitely.
And they will be trained through this modality of being involved in politics and knowing the local and state issues. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Kiana, tell us about the Gen Z people. What are you guys doing and what are you thinking? How are you dealing with, I'm sure you've met people who have said, even young people, my vote does not matter. And we know that's not true. It matters if you don't vote. So share with us what your younger people are doing, some of your struggles and some of your positiveness. Just talk to us right now.
So yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me on this panel. Something that I've been doing is just asking some of my friends and just challenging them to ask some of their friends how they feel about the election, what's going on, what they're doing. From my first experience voting, which was in the 2016 election, I voted at the University of Cincinnati and I voted as an absentee. And that experience was my first experience, like I said, but it was interesting just even at that time to listen to different people like my roommates and stuff like that, and just people on campus just having conversations with people about, well, what do you think about the election? Are you going to even vote? Are you going to practice your right to vote? And it was interesting because my roommate in particular at the time, she wasn't going to vote for, at the time it was Hillary and Trump. And she said that she didn't want to vote for either one of them, and she wanted to vote for someone else as like in a written type of person,
Write-in.
a written person. Yeah.
Right, yes, right in.
And that interested me to kind of research that and just see where her mindset was and stuff like that. And it's important now in 2020 to also understand that a written or a write-in vote is still something that you could do, but it's interesting to hear now that no one is saying that they want to write in anything. They would just prefer to either vote one or for the other. So I just think it's interesting to me to have these challenging conversations with my friends and my with my peers and everything like that. But really, all I can do and all I've been doing is just keep challenging people. Like, are you ready for election day? I've asked my brother. A while ago, he had told me that he didn't want to vote, or he wasn't going to vote, but this is actually one of his first elections that he can vote in, and I challenged him to rethink his reasoning as to why he didn't want to. So he came back around a couple days later, and we just had a conversation as to why now he wants to practice his rights and practice his voting. So I just think it's important, especially for young African American people, to practice our rights. It was a very long, hard struggle and fight to get where we are, and I believe that it's important to not only practice our rights, but also the America that we will live in 20, 30 years. It could be determined how we handle that and how we go about this election. So I think it's important to exercise our rights.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for your comments. I'm going to go back to Virginia and ask, we've all read, we've all heard about the controversy at the state level with the lawsuits about the one ballot, one polling place per county. And we know, we can see the disadvantages in that for the larger counties, the difficulties. If it's a small county, it may not be a problem, but if you're in a county like 𝐘𝐿, it would be a serious problem, even to us, and just the whole issue of getting there. So can you share with us what your group is looking at, or what is your opinion about that? How involved are you in changing or influencing the decision of that lawsuit?
Well, given that we're pretty small grassroots and we're pretty focused on our activities right now, which are improving access. We have 70 boxes across the 𝐾𝐿 County where people can pick up these forms that I've talked about, the registration and vote by mail. So we have not gotten involved in influencing policy at all at this point. Who knows what will happen going forward, because I want to really underscore what you said, Chris, that this has got to be really an ongoing year-round kind of thing. I can't agree with that enough, because it feels like at this point we're kind of like, once again, in this hurried state of get everybody in, and people don't understand their rights. And so we're spending a lot of time right now, informing and all of that. I personally, and this may be wrong, it is hard to keep up with the changes and our Secretary of State's and the lawsuits that are happening and the policies it's so complex for those of us who are staying on top of this stuff, much less people who are underengaged. So at this point, I would say don't expect that there's going to be more than one ballot box. We're not fighting that right now. There's not enough time. If that happens, and there is a possibility it could happen, is what I'm told. But we're a Republican-led state right now, and there have been barriers put in everywhere you go. And this is just another distraction, if you ask me. Like, let's keep our eye on the prize and move forward and say things like, your vote is the most important thing. Your early voting is even more important.
Yes.
I wish I had the answer today, but there is not an answer today. And my worry is that we will find out in a week or two that, oh, okay, now we do have these. And then there's going to be even more confusion, which I swear is a distracting tactic.
Yeah, I agree, and I do understand that there is no answer, and we probably will not have an answer. But as long as we keep it in the forefront of our discussions, as long as we're in the position to say to the Secretary of State, we think there should be more, if that's your opinion,
Yes.
maybe it will make a difference eventually. Not
Yes.
for this election, but eventually. Yes, and Chris, the idea of your church of getting your people in vans and taking them there, I mean, certainly that would impact on the number of cars dropping ballots in that box at that one box we have in Cuyahoga County.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That I will just say that I think is a great idea also. It sounds like you guys are doing such a great job. Pastor Flanagan, we went down to a 𝐓𝐈𝐓. I don't know if you're familiar with 𝐓𝐈𝐓. It's it's a shelter for people in recovery. And we did a big education effort there, and we got them all excited about voting, and they talked about the same thing. And the executive director there, who's a friend of mine, is going to do the exact same thing that you're doing. It's not even that far. The Board of Elections isn't even that far from them. And so I think that is a really creative way. You can't take their ballots down for them, but you can all go together.
Right. Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. To Kiana, I often wonder, as you think about your generation and who they listen to, who do they get their advice from? And I'm just curious as to your opinion. Are you listening more to your peers, especially on the voting issue, or are you listening to your parents? You know, I'm one of those who believe that parents should lead by example. And of course, if your parents are voting, your children will learn to vote, etc. So do you have an opinion on who are they listening to more, the parent or the peers?
I think it can be a mixture of both. I know for myself, I listen to my parents and what my parents have to say and listen to their guidance. For the rest of my generation, I'm not sure who they would utilize more. I think it could be a combination of both. I know for myself as well, I also get a lot of information from different social media, different radio stations and everything like that. And even just watching the news, I've gained a lot of insight. I used to never watch the news, but I've realized because my parents watch the news that I actually can gain a lot of information from just watching the news. So I think it has to go, I think it has to do with both sides, both from other peers, or even like social media outlets and stuff like that, but also from the guidance of our parents.
Yeah, okay. You know, personally, I'm still surprised when I hear young and old people say that my vote does not matter. I'm still surprised because I thought we had gotten to the point where there's a knowledge level. We know that it matters. It matters when we don't vote. So to Reverend Flanagan, you have youth groups at your church, and you have young people there. What are they saying? Are they saying that? Or are they pretty much?
I believe that comes out of frustration, that comes out of all of this chaotic picture that we're looking at now, all of this chaos. You know, I mean, the things that are taking place, you know, we have to pull the layers back, so to speak, and help them to understand, to keep the main thing, which is your vote. And it does count. Because there's so many things on top of it. I mean, there's so many things, you know, how can I say it? We know that there's a tomorrow. We know that we're being an adult, our mindset is a little bit different than young people. Their mindset a lot of time is right now. And what I see right now does not look good. So right now it's no use. But we have to teach them, engaging them to understand that it moves further than November.
Yes.
It moves further than January. These decisions, it does count. It will count for you. It will count for your children. We see something going on right now that's brewing that will impact generations to come. So we have to help our young people, engage them where they are, but help them to look at the bigger picture, that it does count.
Yes.
And understand that how can I say that? The effects of it counting, you may not see some of the turnover immediately, but your vote counts because we get old, as we go down in life and move on in years, you'll see the changes.
Yes.
I mean, right now, we're looking at the fact what's going on right now is an example that we did not vote.
Yes.
Now,
Exactly.
we have to own this, whether we want to or not. We have to own all of this because we did not vote. And a not to vote is just like voting for.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Yes.
voted for in absent all of this is going on, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And I think that we have to look at it. We have to, until we own it, what we have done, that will help us see what we've got to do.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you do what you always did, you're going to get what you always got. Just like Kiana said, some of the young people, well, their mindset is of such that, okay, well, you know what? It's okay. I'll make it through it. Do I have to vote? Write in a vote, all of those things, and not realizing the impact that it's going to have down the road.
Absolutely. I think if we begin educating young people from very early on, we have some activities where we're going to have a big event, hopefully if it doesn't rain tomorrow, at a few CMHA estates, and I have, the big coloring pages for the kids, future voter, to start really engaging people really, really young, and to help them understand that we've made everything so political, and it's really a personal act. Voting is a personal act. It speaks to what you believe in, what you want to stand up for. I mean, I think it's patriotic, and if people can speak to, it's your way of saying what matters to you. And
Yes.
if everybody votes, then things would change. But if it weren't such an important right, there wouldn't be so many people fighting your votes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm a planner by nature. I love making plans. And in our household, we both talked about our plan to vote.
Yes.
So I'm saying this so that people will get away from the notion, oh, I'll get my ballot, I'll put it on the table and I'll get to it. We can't afford to do that. You have to have a plan. And as an example, our plan is we're going to get our ballot. We're going to complete it right then and there. Then the next day, no more than 2 days, we will have it in the box. So that is a plan, that's a doable plan. And I'm not saying that should be your plan. I'm just saying that you should have a plan, and it should be purposeful, and it should be an immediate plan.
Yes.
We don't have the luxury of getting around to it. We have to do it now.
And Mary, if I may engage in some comment what you said, and that's so true, because we have to plan it. Because I'm going to give you an example right now. On the east side of Cleveland, the census registration is so low because people have not planned out. And as a result, and the fear is that the election is going to be the same way on that side. Because people are not doing, like you said, we have to plan it, and if we don't plan to do the work, then we've got a problem.
That's right. That's right.
We don't have as I said, we have to plan the work and then work the plan.
Work the plan, yes. Work the plan.
And we haven't done that. And I guess I'm not playing hardball, but I'm kind of disturbed at what I'm seeing, and what's going on, and we cannot afford to let that kind of action move into what we're trying to do with voting.
Yeah. And not only do people need a plan, they need a follow-up. They need to make sure people can check with the Board of Elections to make sure their vote was counted. If they don't trust the system, they can check with the system. There are organizations that are helping people with voter protection. There is a hotline that we give out to people. 𝐏𝐋𝐄𝐀𝐒. It's a number that people can call and get information to dispel myths. I would caution everybody, we can all get sucked into social media, but go to the official sites for information. I'm just so impressed with our Board of Elections. They're overwhelmed and overworked.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Excellent.
Have good information. They have great information. They will tell you the real deal. But this, I called here actually for somebody I was helping, and the woman that I spoke with said, you know, people can check to make sure their vote was counted. They got to get on the Board of Elections and so that you can track your ballot. You know, so really, if you guys have time, you can even do a share screen where you can show people how to get on the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, because even that is kind of confusing. It's not simple. You have to really look at it and see all the drop-down boxes and see what your options are. You can see, did they get my application for my absentee ballot? Did my ballot get in there? And if it didn't, I'm calling.
And another thing to interject too, you were saying, looking and using the computer, because another issue that has come up is purging.
Thank you.
Purging,
Yes.
you know, purging.
Yes.
A lot of people thought that, you know, just because you voted in the primary election, you may not be on the list for general. So you have to look at those things ahead of time, and we have to educate our people. We have to educate them to go online. You can check that as well. If you are registered to vote, make sure you haven't been purged, because all of these are things that they have done, that they're doing to try to discredit your vote.
Mm-hmm.
Every 6 years.
Yeah, give you an example. My church was a major polling place till last year. They changed it. Unbeknown to me, of course, I went downtown and, you know, but what they said is that they moved people from the poll, where my church is, up the street to another school, from 131st to 116th. Well, I asked them, why would you do something like that? This community is made up of a lot of seniors. So they walk to the poll. Now, to walk from one end to 131st is totally different than walking to 116. But these are the things that they did.
This is a time to remind our listeners, if you have questions or comments, you know, you can log in those questions and comments. You can do that by going to the link on this program, or you can email eastmountzion.church.org.
Just follow up on Chris's point about the suppression. Just real quick, that is what we have found. I think that 93-year-old woman that I spoke with today and that I mentioned earlier, I think that's exactly what happened to her. She was registered a long time ago, and I looked her up on my phone and she was not in there. And she looked at me and she said, I voted in the primary. I know I did. You know, so I'm convinced people who registered a long time ago, if they've missed a few elections because they couldn't get there, they're going to be purged. Every 6 years in Ohio, the clock restarts. So you can never register too many times. If you have any question about your registration, you know, you're not sure, do it, you can do it again. No, it's not fraudulent to do that.
Actually, that is one of the services that we had at our Engage Sunday. Kiana had that responsibility, and she was checking, and I'm going to offer that as a service even now. So if they're members of East Mount Zion, and I'm going to say the greater Cleveland community, give us a call. Call East Mount Zion and let us know the issue, and we will have Kiana do the research for us and find out if that person has been purged from the list or if they're still a registered voter. And if they have been purged, we can help to get them back on the registration list. There's so many things that, you know, we can do as we think about our seniors. You know, certainly we can call and encourage them to vote. We can encourage their family members to, you know, help them. And, you know, I understand your point that we can't take a handful of ballots, but, you know, I think with the person's permission, you can take. Please explain that in more detail.
Absolutely. I think this is another really important point. Thank you for saying that, Mary. We have run into functional illiteracy quite often, and there's a very high rate of that. And there's a lot of shame that goes around that. And so I feel that this is part of the longer term educational process that we need to do, which is to destigmify or destigma, whatever, what the word, I'm not finding the right word, but let people know that there is no shame and that there are resources in the community to help with literacy. But when it comes to voting, your family member can help you. No, you make the ultimate decision. You do make that ultimate decision. Your vote is the one that has to be, but they can help you. And people who have difficulty with writing, as long as the signature matches the registration for their polling site, then that's fine. Even if it doesn't look the way that a signature you think should look, right? It just needs to match how they sign every time, right?
Yes.
Everybody's signature looks so different. But we have had people who are kind of mentoring other people and saying, I suspect that this person may have some literacy issues. And so I'm going to offer to walk them through the system. And I ask them, who do you want to vote for? Here are things to think about. I'm not going to make the decision for you, but here are things to think about. You let me know what your decision is. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time, but I think that's what it takes. Because the people that stay in the shadows and don't tell anyone they need help, they're not going to exercise their right. And there's nothing more empowering than voting. Nothing.
Absolutely. Virginia, how much scrutiny is there? I appreciate your point in terms of the consistency and how you sign your signature. I was reading recently about some voters were taken off the list because the list would not accept hyphenated names.
Right.
Is that factual?
Well, so it's got to match the official registration. Whatever's on the official registration, it's matched. Yeah, the hyphens I have found that they don't always put the hyphens in the registration. They just put both names. So say there are two names that are hyphenated, they just put both names in there, and there isn't always a hyphenation. So it's the best bet is to double check, calling the Board of Elections and saying, what am I to do if I have two last names that are hyphenated? But it really just has to match. Whatever you sign has to match what your official registration is.
Okay. So that is the takeaway from that question. As long as your signature will match from year to year, election to election, you should.
Yeah. I mean, there are going to be subtle changes, I think, as we age, our handwriting changes, but the Board of Elections will look at signatures, and they will also ding if you put an initial and you originally your official registration has your name fully written out. If you only put an initial, be gone. They'll ding it. They'll toss it out unless somebody can help them go back. That was one I needed to follow up on and let them know you got to sign your full first and last name the way you did on your official registration.
Yes.
No first initial if it's not the same on your registration. I hope that makes sense.
It does make a great deal of sense. Yes, okay. Yes. Kiana, is there anything else you would like to add? Can you share with us that experience you had in the engagement Sunday? I did watch you interact with a lot of people. So can you share with us that experience?
Sure. So what I was responsible for that Sunday on August 30th was I was responsible for looking at the voter registration to see who was registered to vote. And I was I believe on the Board of Elections website, and there is a tab that you'll go to, and you'll just click that tab. The name of that tab is escaping my brain right at this second, but all that you'll need is your first name, your last name, and your date of birth for your month, day, and year. And that will take you to another web page browser, and it'll tell you if you are registered to vote and the address as well that you are registered to vote under. And I remember earlier you were asking me about the challenges that some younger people are facing, especially those who are at university and at college at this time. The main challenge that they're facing with registering to vote has to do with the uncertainty of the COVID-19 and where the college or university will be at the time of the election. So as of November 3rd. If they are registered to vote by an address that is at their school, it would probably, like Virginia was saying, it would probably just be easier for them to just keep that address, but I'm not sure how things were really going to work for the universities at this time. But I was just informed as well that that voter registration link is on the church website.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Again, people can change their vote by mail. I mean, if they're in college and they want their absentee ballot to be sent somewhere else, they can do that. So that is an option, but we just don't want it to get too late.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, I think our time has been well spent. We want to help. Our churches would like to help. Virginia's group would like to help. There are other groups in our communities that would like to help. So call us, let us know what your needs are. We are creative, we want to serve. God wants us to serve, and we want to honor his request. So guys, let us know, put your questions, put your comments online, and we will definitely get back to you. Again, if you're doing some creative things, let us know what they are. Chris, I applaud you for starting this, I'm going to say committee for lack of a better term. That will be an ongoing educational process about the voting process and political types of things, because we have to be on top, we have to lead. And again, this is a great training venture for our younger generation. Talk to the kids in Sunday school about it. The little kids, as a matter of fact, and the teenagers. So I just thank you guys very much. This has been a wonderful experience. Again, voting matters. My vote matters. Your vote matters. And please don't buy my vote does not count. That is a lie. That is a lie. So we know better. We will do better. So thank you all very much. I will be in touch with each of you. And this concludes our broadcast. Thank you, Pastor Cash, for the opportunity. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Everyone
you.
have a good evening. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you all. Again, just another wonderful conversation, and I'm so grateful for Mrs. Warr and all of our panelists who contributed to this conversation. This is not an ending conversation, but it's only a beginning, because from here all the way to November, we're going to be talking about the importance of voting. We want to make sure everyone is registered to vote by October 13th and get some of those important dates down, as today was the final day for filling out your census. And we want to make sure that you have registered to vote and you have filled out your early ballot so that we can submit that. And we're going to be making sure that you get those early ballot applications so that we can get that down and mailed to the Board of Elections, and then you can get that ballot and vote early, because we do not want you waiting to November to vote. We want all that stuff done now. All right. So again, thank y'all so much for joining us on tonight. And I pray that you were blessed by this experience of us sharing about voting. I always open this opportunity for you to join our church and get to know Christ and have a relationship with Christ. And so if you are that person and want to make that new commitment and become a new disciple, why don't you join us today? The information is on the screen. You can also become a partnering member with us in terms of a financial contributor. You can text the letters EMZBC to the number 77977 and be able to share in a gift or donation or tithe to the East Mount Zion Baptist Church. You can also mail in your gift to the church, the information on the screen, or you can drop by the church after the presidential debate is over. But you can drop by the church even today, because that was over on yesterday, and we'll be open and ready to receive that as well. Again, thank y'all so much for joining us. Share this with someone else so that someone else may be blessed, church or organization share this conversation with them. Let's pray now. Lord, we thank you again for this experience on tonight. We bless your name. We ask, oh God, you continue to bless us as we continue to serve you. It is in your name that we pray. Every child of God said, amen. Be blessed. Have a wonderful rest of your week.